Perfect. So welcome everyone to our SheJumps Bikepacking 101 event with Tina Teofilo. I'm Kelsey Rode. I use she, her pronouns, and I volunteer as an event coordinator for SheJumps in Boston. I'd like to say a quick thank you to the national SheJumps team, Gaia GPS, and Tina for the roles that you each played in making this event happen. While you're watching or as the program continues, please feel free to continue to put your name, your preferred pronouns, and where you're joining us from in the chat so we get to see how wide our community is. We're expecting to have over 100 people on the webinar tonight. About 140 people signed up, which is incredible, and we're very excited about that. So we definitely want to see where we're all at. And while we are meeting virtually from different regions, I do want to recognize that we are hosting this event out of Boston, Massachusetts, and the neighborhood that I'm joining you from is on the traditional land belonging to the Pennacook or Pawtucket and Massachusetts tribes. Tina, if you wouldn't mind jumping ahead to the next slide. Before we get on to more about SheJumps and Tina, I also want to share that as an added bonus for participating tonight, Gaia GPS will be giving each of you a 3-month free trial. Gaia GPS is a planning and navigation tool that helps you pinpoint your exact location on the map, find your way through remote terrain, and use maps in the backcountry away from cell service. You can plan ahead at home using GaiaGPS.com, and then download your maps and route to your phone and use the app to access them offline. This is a really cool resource and one that I recommend checking out for upcoming summer adventures. So many thanks to Gaia for your partnership and support. Next slide. And now on to SheJumps. SheJumps is a national nonprofit organization whose members work to encourage women and girls to participate in outdoor activities. We believe in creating safe, educational, outdoor experiences for girls and women that nurtures growth and transformation. We're here because we believe in the potential of all women and girls through outdoor play and connection to nature. And we are committed to establishing objectives related to justice, diversity, equity, and inclusion across the organization. We operate out of 7 regions throughout the country and welcome all women and girls, transgender and cisgender, as well as non-binary people who identify with the women's community. SheJumps strives to be an ally in the fight against racism and acknowledges that our events and programs take place on traditional, unceded Indigenous lands. We're excited to have you joining us tonight, and I would encourage you to stay connected by following our social media. I will put more information about all that in the chat after this, and I would encourage you to stay connected on our website as well, and I'll provide that link too. Now I'd like to introduce Tina. Tina Teofilo is an avid biker and Alts forms who currently works in Philadelphia as a cardiac ICU nurse. She loves to commute by bike every day to work. As someone who met Tina in Philly and has been friends with her for a while, I can confirm that Tina will bike in any condition. I've seen her bike in torrential downpours and snow. She's never afraid of going for a bike ride. And she also enjoys going on bikepacking trips all over and occasionally races in triathlons. She wants everyone to feel included and safe in the biking community and do her part to make biking a more accessible activity for all. So Tina, I will pass it over to you for the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for the introduction. I'm Tina. I use she, her pronouns. I want to thank SheJumps and Gaia for having me today. I'm so excited to be here. As she mentioned, I want everybody to feel the joy that I feel when I'm biking and share that passion with everybody. So I'm so excited to do this presentation today, and hopefully we'll bring a couple more riders onto the trail. There will be time for questions afterwards, so hold on to those and we'll get started. So I'll chat a little bit about how I got into biking. It really shows that anybody can, and it really doesn't take much to get started. So while I was living in Chicago, a friend had asked me to do this 90-mile race around a lake in Wisconsin. So I found this little red Schwinn that was $70 on Craigslist. That's the bike that's pictured in the middle. That bike has taken me down the West Coast. I used it to bike from Charleston, South Carolina to Charlotte, North Carolina. I did the Great Allegheny Passage from Cumberland, Maryland to Pittsburgh. And as Kelsey mentioned, I ride it every day to work on my bike commute. And then I just wanted to show my other two bikes just to show that bikes come in many different forms and they have different purposes, but no bike is right, no bike is wrong. The one on the far left I used for my first triathlon, again, was a Craigslist purchase, just a little bit lighter frame, so it got me a little bit faster. And then finally, my most recent purchase was the bike on the right side, which actually fits me and has a nice light frame, so it's aerodynamic. And then we will start chatting about why you have different bikes and what their purposes are. So first, I just want to say, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something with a certain bike. They're very simple machines, so you can kind of take what you have and you can do a lot with it. When I first bought my red bike, it was a single speed, and I was able to work with a couple different bike shops to convert it into an 8-speed bike. A single speed just means that you only have one gear, so it's a little bit harder on hills, it's harder to go faster, and so that was a pretty easy transition to be able to make. There are the casual cruisers, you see those on the beach, and then there's road bike, and I'll kind of go through these just in case you're in the market for buying a bike and you hear these terms floating around, you can have an idea of what people are talking about. Road bike is a little bit of a blanket term. I think that that's a great place to start. They have a little bit of a heavier frame, which is great, especially for these camping trips. It's able to hold your gear. You're not going to get blown around in the wind, which is great. And then you probably hear the term hybrid. That's a little bit of a newer thing that people use those a lot for commuting. They just have a little bit more accessories and a little bit more expensive. And then mountain bikes are great. They have the bigger wheels. They're very durable and they're a little bit slower just because they're a little bit heavier, but those are awesome bikes as well. And then you have your racing bikes, which are the fancy schmancy things. They're fun, but they're not great for these camping trips. They're so light and they're meant to be aerodynamic, and you're not going to be very aerodynamic with all of the bags hanging off of you. So that's something that you can think about later down the road. But and then a newer thing are these folding bikes, which I think are pretty cool. That's in the bottom left corner. They're really easy to take you with you on trips, on trains. I've seen a lot of people like bring them into work. So that can be a cool idea for especially some shorter trips. And it's really fun with biking just to get creative. When I went out to the West Coast to bike, I took the train, and there's a lot of train lines that will have specific cars that just carry your bikes. So you're able to keep your bike completely intact, and they'll just bring it right onto the train. And then when I came home from the West Coast, I flew. And so I was able to take my bike to a bike shop, and they were able to disassemble it and put it in a box, which was a pretty easy process. And then you're able to just bring that on as luggage. Another option, which I just did recently, is if you're not feeling like taking your bike with you when you're traveling, you can also rent bikes from shops. I recently biked the Florida Keys from one end to the other, and I was able to rent a bike from one end and bike it to the other end and then leave it there, and the guy from the shop was able to pick it up. So I've had wonderful experience with the bike community, and people are usually really excited to work with you. So after you get a bike, you can start talking about all the gear, which is the fun part. If you're doing a shorter trip, you can obviously get by with less gear. If you're doing a longer trip, my biggest suggestion would be to get a back rack. And some people will also ride with a front rack. I don't love doing that just because it makes steering a little bit more challenging. But if you put the back rack on, and then the bags that you put on top of that are called panniers. And my picture in the upper right corner is an example of what I usually look like when I'm on a trip. So I have the two bags off to the sides, and then I usually put my camping bag or my sleeping bag on top, and I bungee cord it down, and then it carries everything I need. So here's my pannier. It's not too big, not too small, carries everything I need it. I use it every day for work as well. And yeah, my biggest suggestion with these bags is to just make sure that your bag is waterproof. Most panniers are waterproof, but I would just read some reviews before you buy anything to make sure. There's nothing worse than having all of your things wet. One time, my entire coffee spilled in my backpack on my way to work and it didn't leak through. So I can assure you that the bags that I have are very waterproof. The brand is Ortlieb and I love them. So I also carry with me a waterproof phone holder, just in case it's gonna rain or anything like that. I take a rain jacket with me, and then if it's too hot, I'll just bungee cord it back onto my back rack. And yeah, so it's also nice because they usually have some reflective tape, which makes it a little bit easier for people to see you. Another important thing to consider is your water and food supply that you're going to carry and also access along the way. I usually carry Camelback on my back and a couple other water bottles, but it's really important to make sure that you have enough for a full day and then maybe some extras just in case, just in the event that nowhere is open. Have a plan for where you're going to get water and your food. Fortunately, a lot of the planned routes do have adequate places to stop for food and water along the way. But it's just something to think about, especially if you're going to do something off the beaten path. I'll usually carry with me some extra peanut butter, some electrolyte tabs and bars and whatnot, just to make sure that I'm all set. So what I like to do to start my day is I'll take my little camp stove, which is tiny and amazing. So this is the fuel supply, and you just have to like tighten on your stove onto the top of it. And then you can put a little container on top of that. And this will boil up your water. And that's how I make my coffee every morning. And then I'll usually make my oatmeal as well. And so you have everything right there. It's not too much gear right there. And then I'll usually at the end of the day make like a soup or boil up some veggies or something like that. Most campfires have fire pits, so you can also plan to make your meals around the fire. Although for me, it just feels a little less reliable. I'm not a great fire starter, so I like to keep my camp stove handy. And yeah, there are some really great cooking books out there, so that's something to look into. Some extra things to consider is having some soap. A towel of some sort, microfibril, is great because it folds very small and dries very quickly. And then I'll usually travel with some extra string in case anything gets wet. You can hang it up and then let it dry. So for clothes, I try to be really conscious of packing some great layering clothes that you can wear over and over. I err on the side of making sure that I'm warm enough at night because you can always take clothes off during the day. So I prefer riding with a bike onesie suit. It holds everything in and it has a nice little butt pad, which is awesome. It's not your first day that's gonna drive you crazy. It's gonna be like your third, fourth, fifth day, and you don't want that to hinder you from biking. So I love the bike onesies. And then another option are these clip-on shoes. They are wonderful. I personally, though, don't use them for my bike trips only because your bike is so heavy, and especially if you're riding on the road and you need to stop quickly, it can be really hard to clip out. The bottom right picture is my friend on the bike trip, and she was trying to order tacos and she couldn't get out fast enough, so she fell over, and that happened a lot of times on our trip. So something to consider. The advantage of having the clip-ins is that it gives you power both on your up and your down of the pedal stroke. But then you need an extra pair of shoes, so something to think about. I use the clip-ins on my racing bikes, but not on my commuting bikes. And then again, just trying to be prepared for weather as much as you can, just so that that's not hindering your experience. Yeah. So here are some options that I saw then that I have seen on my various adventures, and some ideas for sleeping. I've seen a lot of creative ideas and it's fun to see what people come up with. We personally used, when I did the West Coast, which was about a month trip, we used a small little tent, which was this big. It was able to fit right on top of my back rack in between my 2 bags, so not too big. And fortunately, because there were 2 of us, we were able to split the gear out between the 2 of us. This is technically a 1-person tent. We're pictured in the bottom right. There was plenty of space for both of us, so it was very comfortable. I like to carry and travel a tarp with me that you can put under your tent just in case it's rained, or you can also put it over your tent if it's like horrible weather. And then what I'll do is I'll put it on my back rack underneath my sleeping bag and all of that, so that if it's a rainy day and your tire is like throwing mud at you, it's also keeping that from getting dirty. So that is something that you can think about. I saw some people that would just pack a hammock and camp, and just all you need are 2 trees. So that is an awesome option that keeps you very light, very easy. Something that I had never seen before is called a bivy sack. That's pictured in the upper left. And this is actually an even nicer version than what I saw some people using, but it's like kind of like a sleeping bag and tent all in one that you just lay on the ground. So very minimal equipment, which is great. But yeah, I don't know, not for me, but it's an idea. And then in the upper right, I did see some people carrying with them. And this actually looks like an awesome option, like a mini trailer thing that they just they attach to their bike, so that you can throw all of your gear inside and then you can sleep there at night, which actually sounds like a pretty awesome option. And then if you're really not into sleeping on the ground, which I get, you can plan ahead and glamp along the way. I would say when I did my West Coast trip, that was the first trip that I had done. I really didn't know anything, and I got very fortunate that I did it where I did it. On the West Coast, they're like very forgiving for hikers and bikers. They have these hiker biker sites along the whole coast, and if you walk up or ride up, they're not going to turn you away. So it was wonderful just to know that and have that peace of mind that you had a place to stay. And it was like $5 because you barely took up any space, and they would let you shower and all of that. So there's like various options along the way. But within those sites, there were also like yurts or little camping buildings if you feel like you didn't want to go on the ground. I think that it's really important to recognize what animals are going to be around the campsites that you'll be staying at, and just thinking about that before you're traveling. On the West Coast, I had to be conscious of bears, and especially when I was biking through the redwoods, which was 2 days pretty much in the woods with no cell service. So just thinking about these things. I did carry a bear spray with me. My brother made me get it. And when I was biking the Florida Keys, everybody told me to look out for alligators. So just thinking about these things as you're on your bike. So a little bit more on safety. I have kind of a funny story. When we were a little too confident one night, we left our bag of food sitting on a picnic table, and just because we were too tired. And so we were in our tent, we were starting to wind down, we were journaling, and we heard some rummaging outside. So we were 100% sure it was a bear. So we created a little plan. We slowly zipped open the tent, and Kristen, my bike partner, was like ready to flash a light and see what we had. And I had the bear spray ready to go. And she opened the door, and we saw 10 raccoon eyes staring right back at us. So fortunately, it wasn't a bear, but it was a very silly mistake. So we had made friends with some of the guys that night, and they told us raccoons love bags because they know that there's usually food inside of it. So if we don't take the bags away, they're going to keep coming back. So they taught us how to put all of our food in our bag, hang it in a tree. That's shown in the upper right picture. So I would say just be like very conscious. Don't keep your food in your tent, because then animals are going to want to try and get to it. In a lot of areas where there are bears prevalent, there are often bear containers where you can put all of your food in for the night. And so that is a nice perk as well. A lot of camping stores, including REI, will give you these little bear containers if you're interested in holding your fresh food. And then the safety blanket, I also have a story about that. I always carry this with me now everywhere. So we had, we were staying in the redwoods and the temperature got pretty cold. And we were laughing because the safety blanket on the back says that you can use it for first aid, shelter, a tarp, ground cover. You can use it to like get the attention of a plane. And we're like, there's no way that this blanket can do all these things. But we were sleeping in the redwoods and it got to like 20 degrees, so cold. And we were like, oh, a safety blanket. So we put it over us and it like was like a thermal blanket and kept us very warm. We woke up sweating and it was perfect. So just thinking about where you're staying and the different temperatures and whatnot, because especially if you're going to be somewhere where you don't have service, it's so huge to make sure that you're safe. Always wear a helmet, please. I do it every single day that I ride. And then wear bright colors or safety vests or something just to make you seen. Some cars are not happy to see bikes on the road, unfortunately. So we just have to be very seen. It is helpful if you're able to ride in a pack or on a trail. It just keeps you a little bit safer. And then for lights, I like to bring my headlamp, especially when I go camping, for walking around at the campsite. But also if you happen to be riding in the early morning or late at night, you can also like use it as a headlamp to see ahead of you. I would caution to not riding in the not light time, just especially if you have all of your gear, it could be dangerous. And then having a red light on the back and then a white light in the front just helps you be a little bit more visible. Something to think about though is right now, a lot of these lights are USB chargeable. So thinking about how you're going to charge your stuff along the way is important. As a nurse, I like to have a little first aid kit with me, some supplies to help you in a pinch. So also important to consider bathrooms along the way. I would suggest always having some toilet paper and napkins with you just in case. It's good to consider where you're going to find your bathrooms along the way. And I really think it's important to try to leave no trace, try to bring all of your garbage and trash with you until you can safely get rid of that. Again, as I mentioned, power sources. So I really love coffee shops. That's one of my favorite things to go visit. And so what I do a lot of times on my trips is I'll try to start the day really early, get going at like 6 or 7 in the morning, bike for a couple hours, and then try to find a coffee shop along the way. And you can use that to charge up all of your stuff. This is a picture. This is what most of our days look like when we were biking down the West Coast. We would stop at a bike shop, get out of the sun for a couple hours, charge up everything, have a snack, and then continue on. So yeah, just thinking about how you're going to keep your devices charged. I really like using a physical map. I love maps. And that's another way that you can save some phone battery. And if you need your phone in a pinch, you have it, but that's not your sole source for how you're going to get everywhere. I would like to speak a little bit about Warm Showers. It's this really awesome website, funny name, but so it's specifically for hikers and bikers, where there's hosts that create a profile. And then if you want to stay, you also have to create a profile and do like a mini background check. But it's basically these individuals have clear instructions on like if they have space, if they have an extra bed, if they have floor space, if some people will even just let you camp out in their yard, but I think it has to be free. So nobody charges you, and it's just like the gracious goodness of their own heart that they want to provide the space for you. Oftentimes they're also avid hikers and bikers. And so a couple times along our way, just because there were no campsites in between various cities that we were traveling through, we would stay with these different families. And because we were 2 girls, we said that we were only going to stay with either another female or another couple. And it worked out great. Everybody welcomed us into their home. They would feed us a nice warm dinner, and they would let us do our laundry, which is heavenly on these trips. So it's a really, really cool option to check out. And then, Airbnb can be an option too, especially in a pinch. One time when I was doing my trip between Charlotte and Charleston, I was on my own, and I couldn't find a campsite in between. And so I found a family that would let me camp out on their property, and then they let me come in for dinner and whatnot. So there's, again, the bike community is really amazing. So if you're willing to reach out to people, people are often really, really willing to work with you. I talked about the hiker biker sites. Yes. So a lot of my trips started with me kind of being like, oh, I really want to visit this state, or I have two friends in these two cities. I want to see both of them. How am I gonna get between the two? And I'll be like, I'll just bike. So there's a lot of ways that you can come about your trips. And I would say just get creative, but also, especially if you're just starting to get into this and you're trying to figure out how you want to do it, there's some amazing resources out there. TrailLink is awesome. It's a website that breaks down by state, and it gives you like wonderful descriptions of trails in your state between various cities. And it talks about all of the resources, where you can start, where you can like pick in, where you can end, restaurants along the way, camping, all of these accommodations along the way. So I actually used that when I traveled the Great Allegheny Passage, which was an amazing trail. The whole path was a trail, so we didn't have to worry about cars at all. So that, like, if that's a place that you want to start, there's so many options for that. What I use for my West Coast trip is called Adventure Cycling Association, and it's also, I think, primarily America, and they have various maps along various routes throughout the country. And so, for example, on the West Coast, they have like 8 maps that take you from Canada all the way to Mexico. And I didn't do the whole thing, so I only had to buy 5 of the maps. And so it just breaks it down. It gives you extremely clear instructions, and you can buy the physical map, or you can also, they have an app, and so you can do all of this by your phone as well. And then Bike League also breaks down maps on its website with a very interactive maps of state by state trails and whatnots. Yes. So we might have to have a backpacking 102 course where I can go a little bit more in depth with some of this stuff. But I will say my biggest advice is to just have these tools with you, even if you don't know how to fix something. Again, as I've said, the biking community is amazing. So just last year when I did the Great Allegheny Passageway, I was in a rush when I was traveling, and it was only a 2-day trip, so I didn't bring as much gear as I normally do. And so I randomly, thankfully, had an extra tube in my bag from a previous trip, but I didn't have the levers to take my tire off. And so I got a flat tire, and I'm just thankfully I had the extra tube. But so some random stranger was like, oh, I have levers. And so he helped me take my tube off, and we were able to fix it. We happened to be by one of those like standing bike fixer things that has all the tools. So people are super willing to help you, but it's really great to be prepared and have all of these things, because it does not have anything to do with how well you ride, whether you get a flat tire. So usually your tire will be okay for the whole trip, but have some spare tubes. That's what is gonna deflate if you get a flat. So the levers are gonna help you take your tire off. So you need 2 of those. They just help you go around to get it open. And then another thing that's helpful is a patch kit. Sometimes if it's a small hole and you're able to just patch it up, then you don't need to use one of your spare tubes. So that can be a good option as well. A multi-tool is a great idea. I would just make sure that you're getting a tool that actually works with your bike. My Schwinn is pretty old. I think it's from 1979. So I need to bring individual wrenches for every part of my bike. But so just think about that when you're getting one of these tools. So another cool thing that is fairly new are these CO2 canisters. So I have this little thing that sits on the back of my bike, and it has all of my little tools in it. So these little CO2 canisters gives you enough air to pump up a tire like very quickly. You just attach it to your valve and it pumps it up very quickly. Now, these can malfunction in some way, so I would still suggest having a hand pump just in case, but this will give you more pressure than you're able to get with a hand pump. So awesome thing to have with you. One thing I would definitely say is make sure that you know what kind of a valve you have on your bike. Presta is on the left, and that's a newer thing, and Schrader is on the right. That was more commonly used. So most people know how to use the right, but they don't know how to use the left, but more new bikes have the one on the left. So some pumps work for both. Some pumps simply work for one. So just being conscious of that as well. And then chain care as well. I very fortunately have never busted my chain, but if you get too much gunk in it, it could just completely break. So I use the stuff on the far left, which is just for like wet chain grease, and it just helps clean up your chain a little bit. Before I go on any trip, I will always get my bike tuned up and just make sure everything's looking okay. But yeah, that is most of what I've got. What questions do I have from anybody?
And if you do have questions, you can put those in the chat. I'll make sure to run them by Tina. We do have at least one question, and that is, how much weight total do you bring? And is it not ideal to have all the weight on the back of the bike?
Great question. Yeah. So when I was first researching all of this, I was like gonna just wear a backpack, and I didn't know anything. It's great to like not have that weight on your back. So it's good to distribute it around the bike. So that's a good question. I would say, I think we did weigh our bikes, and it was like 50 pounds or something like that of just gear. And definitely very important to distribute the weight from the left and the right. And again, if you're gonna use the front racks, then you also have to do that. But the front racks, I would put as little as possible, just because that's your steering. So you really don't want that to be off. So we try to balance out the weight between the two of us, and then yeah, just trying to keep it left and right. I can definitely tell because I use just one premier every day to work, that part of my rack bends towards the right because I use that every day. So balancing out your weight is definitely a very good idea. But yeah, I would say like 50 to 60 pounds. Again, the older bikes have the steel frames, and I would suggest that for these kinds of trips. The newer fancy bikes have the carbon, the aluminum frames. They're very light, but that honestly is less ideal for these trips, just because your gear is so heavy, it could bend your frame. So, yes.
Okay. The next question is, what kind of bike did you take on the Gap Trail?
So for all of these trips that I've done these tours on, oh, I meant to say this in the beginning. Bike people call any trip that you do a tour. I don't know why. So if I've been saying that, that's what that means. I have used this Schwinn for all of my trips. So yes, it's my go-to ride or die.
The next one is, if you get a CO2 canister, will they work with both types of tires, Schrader and Presta?
Yes, great question. So there is a canister thing. Of course I don't. So there's like a part that attaches to this that I don't have, which is goofy because then I can't use it. But and so I've only seen it where it has both sides. So I'm pretty sure that there's like a little thingy that screws onto here that you just put onto your bike, and that has both sides, I believe. But that's a great question as well. So this does need to screw into something that like releases the pressure. Something to note is that you can't travel by airplane with these. So just something to think about. Yes, or bear spray. Okay.
So interested in those stories. Someone else wanted to know, do you usually wear gloves when you ride? Does it make a difference, the glove, or what should you look for in a glove?
Great question. So I went through a phase where I did gloves. The nice part is that your hands do get like a little rough and it's actually, I think what's worse is like the pressure of your body on your bike is what really makes my hands sore, at least. And then you also get like marks from the tape on your hands. So I do like the fingerless gloves. It just, then you can like still use your fingers for whatever else you're doing. I will say actually with the picture that I have right now, in wintertime, I really love gloves. There's like these, I don't know why, but they're like lobster gloves. So they have like two hands and it allows you to be able to still hold on to your handles and brake. So I'd say having your fingers be accessible is important for biking because you are like doing a bunch of things while you're doing it. But yeah, there's not a particular brand that I love, but I would say gloves are a nice thing to use. I often forget about them, but yeah, my hands do get a little sore on these long rides. So just to help with the pressure, gloves are a great idea.
Someone else wants to know if you're new to long distance biking or biking and camping, bike packing, how do you estimate how long it will take to get from point A to point B? And how much mileage do you usually put in per day on a long trip?
That's a great question. So when we did this West Coast trip, we were very overeager and I really knew nothing. And so we were doing like 50 to 60 miles a day, which I would say is definitely doable, but a little eager. You're gonna be riding slow, your stuff is heavy. So I would say like imagining like a 9 to 10 mile an hour pace is probably very realistic. And then if you're gonna stop and see anything along the way, and you want it to be something where it's enjoyable also. I think that we had a certain amount of days and we had a certain amount of miles. So we just divided the days by the miles and we're like, well, we need to do 60 miles a day to get to our end point by that day. So that's, I think, usually how I come up with the miles. But I would say a lot of the people that we ran into along the way, and actually on most of my trips, do like a 30 to 40 mile range, which I think is probably a little bit more enjoyable. I think that we were really, and also taking note of your terrain. If it's going to be a really hilly area, then you're going to have to lessen the mileage. But yeah, like 25 to 40, I would say is a good range where you're actually going to be able to enjoy it and it's not going to be so stressful because, and also I guess taking note what time of year it is, how much sunlight you have, when are you going to start, when are you going to end. So just thinking about some of these things. Yeah, I think that it's really important to do some consecutive day biking as you're preparing. Again, like the butt soreness is very real. Use the butt pads, and also like some people will trade out your bike seat. People call it a saddle. So they'll trade out your saddle for a comfier bike seat. And I think that that can really help because it's like day 3, 4 as like you're compounding this pain, but you still need to keep riding. That's when it's like, it's not even enjoyable anymore. So I would say training for like 5, 6 days in a row before your trips, just so that you're kind of building up a little bit of endurance on your butt. Your leg endurance will come as you're going, but the butt thing is really going to like keep you from wanting to keep going. And that would be horrible. So yeah.
The next question is, have you ever used tubeless tires for trips?
I haven't, and it's something that I want to like explore. I just don't know enough about them. I've been with some people that have used them, so I know that they're a thing. But yeah, I can't speak too much about that yet. Sorry, but I think that probably is a great option.
I think that you'll really enjoy answering this next question. It's, how do you fuel during a long day of riding?
I'm so happy. The picture of me with the rainbow and me riding under it is like, that's how I feel. I'm just, it's so, I mean, it's like in the middle of it, you're always kind of like, why am I doing this? But then you get there and you're like, this is why I'm doing this. So I would say just like using these trips as a way to see somewhere that you wanted to see or explore somewhere that you wanted to see. And when you're biking, you're just exploring things in a different way than you ever would if you're driving. You're seeing things more clearly. You're going a little bit slower. So you're able to really take things in. And I think that that's really what I love the most. And especially in new communities or new cities, you're able to like actually go visit places that the locals see. So getting to stop in these local coffee shops or these local taco stores or whatever you're passing through is like so amazing. And obviously, because you have all of this gear on you, everybody asks you what you're doing and why you're doing it. So you get to like connect with people that way. Bikers will seek you out and ask you what you're doing. So it's a really cool little community to be a part of, but I'm always just so happy. Yeah, it's one of my happiest things is just biking around, and especially at the end of the trip, once you get to your destination, it's just an amazing feeling every day.
And then the follow-up question to that is, what do you eat over the course of a long day biking?
This is a great question. I eat a lot. I don't know what it is, but biking like really takes it out of me. So I will always have like a full jar of peanut butter with me just in case. Because if you start to get like famished, it's not good. And then a lot of time, and like I'll bring some bars. I usually bring like a beef jerky or something like that. That's just like a lot of nutrition density in it. And then I'll try, if it's possible, to like make it along the trip, like try to stop at a farmer's market or something like local and pick up food along the way. But I'm eating a lot of nutrition. And again, I'll like bring electrolyte tabs and stuff like that. You're going to want to make sure that you're hydrated, but then also that if you're sweating a ton, that you're taking in that salt. Peanut butter pretzels are a good one. Gummy bears, that's like my new thing from my long training days. So yeah, just make sure you have enough food, I would say, is huge.
So someone else is asking for tips for flight travel by bike, including best airline or bike cases, and when you get to your destination, options for a base camp to store your stuff. Great
idea, or great question. So when I flew back from California, this was so random. I had randomly visited a bike shop and they were like, "Oh, you're going to Chicago? I have a friend that's in Chicago. Just take my bike case and I'll pick it up in Chicago." It was very random, but this is like what the bike community is like. So I do know because of that there are bike cases that are like really nice hard cases. I know Thule, Thule, has a really nice case, and your bike fits so perfectly in it. Again, I would suggest taking it to a shop to do this, just because they're able to like break it down properly for you. And then I would say like going to a shop to have wherever your destination is, have a shop in mind that you're going to go to that can help you fix it and put it back together. And then, as far as storage, I think it just kind of depends on where you're going. I like to be reunited with my bike as quickly as possible after travel, just because it makes me nervous. But just kind of having a shop. And a lot of times, like all of these shops somehow know each other. So if you have a local shop where you're at and you tell them where you're traveling, a lot of times somehow somebody knows somebody. So that's usually how I figure out what shops I'm going to go to.
Do you bring more than one pair of padded shorts?
Great question. Yes, I usually bring two. You kind of have to accept, especially if it's going to be a warmer climate, that you're just going to be pretty gross. So it's like what we would do is I would have two pairs, and then actually after every night, I would like scrub them down. I would have some soap and wash them out a little bit, and then hang them on my makeshift clothesline, and then wear the next pair the next day. So I would change them out every day. And then like every 5 or 6 or so days, trying to stay somewhere where we could wash our clothes was usually what we did.
So Trisha wants to know, do you have any races or long trips coming up?
Hey, Trish. I need to plan another long trip. All of my siblings, which I think some of them are on this chat webinar, want to do a long trip with me. I would love to do the East Coast at some point since I've done the West Coast. I don't have any trips planned, but I am currently training for an Ironman. So that bike portion of that race is 112 miles. So I am doing a lot of biking these days. Yes. You just got an invitation in the chat to go bikepacking in Alaska, by the way. Oh, yes.
And maybe that can be
your next. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Someone else wants to know, do you recommend the pedals with the foot cages as an alternative to clip-in shoes?
no, that's actually a great, I didn't even mention that. That's a great idea, because then you're still able to get the power and then you can get out a lot faster. I actually think that's a phenomenal idea, because part of my trip on the West Coast there were like very hilly days and we legitimately had to get off our bikes and walk them just because it was so hilly and we weren't able to get enough power. So I think that's a great option.
That same person wants to know, do you use any frame bags when touring or just pannier bags?
So yeah, good question. I usually do like 1 or 2 frame bags. My bike handlebars, just because of how it was made, is really, really small. So I do love when bikes have like the handlebar bag and then you can put your like important things there. Mine just like doesn't have that capability. So yeah, I really like the little inside the frame bags. And there's some awesome options where you can get that and it will like tie to the top of the bike and then the back of the bike. And then you have just a little more space. Yeah, frame bags are awesome for sure.
And then it looks like this may be the last question, and it's, how do you lock up your gear when you're exploring the city?
Great question. I do always bring a lock with me. And so okay, so there's a couple different types of pannier bags. And so like mine has this little strap, and so you can kind of like carry it with you. It's a little annoying, but there are some bags that are actually really awesome and they have like a full strap, so it can like almost turn into a backpack after you take it off your bike. So if you're like thinking that you're going to do more like exploring of your cities, I would like maybe look into those kind of pannier bags. But a lot of times, because like, especially if I'm traveling through a city and I'm not staying in that city, I'll just bring my bike with me, but I'll lock up the bike and then I'll bring the bags with me. So that's usually what I'll do. I don't, because actually even here in Philly, one time I locked up my bag to my bike, but somebody still like rummaged through it. So people can still get into your bag. So I would say bring your bags with you and just lock up the bike. But yeah, I do always bring a lock just in case. And actually, even while I'm at the campsite, I do lock up my bike, just because it would be pretty awful to wake up and not have any form of transportation the next day. So yeah, that's a good idea.
And actually, one more question just came through, so we'll see if that's the last one. But it's, in a colder environment, how many and what types of jackets do you bring?
Yeah, so this picture shows me in real life just commuting in Philly during the winter. So I love my waterproof coat. I have a raincoat that's like an extra size too big so that I can layer up pretty aggressively. So I would say like a full set of underarm or like some kind of Under Armour gear, or like long underwear, pants, shirt, and then like a sweatshirt. And then I do like 2 pairs of socks, try and get like some decent boots that will keep you warm. I do my little lobster gloves. And then the face mask actually for me makes all the difference in the world, even pre-COVID, for cold weather. It just like really helps keep everything in. So I think just like having as little skin exposed makes such a difference. But like I would wear this get up for all winter and I would actually be pretty fine. I usually try to keep with me hand and toe warmers with me at all times in the winter, just in case, like if you get wet and you just can't get warm. So just having those on hand, I think is a good option. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it looks like those are all the questions from the chat. So I just want to thank you again, Tina, for sharing your knowledge with us tonight. And thank you all for attending. I just want to encourage you one more time to follow us on our social media. You can find us on Facebook by searching SheJumps Northeast Region, or on Instagram by writing in SheJumps_Northeast. You can also check out our website to see other events that are going on beyond the Northeast region. So with that, I hope you all have a great night and we'll see you soon at another event.
Yeah.